All right.
What chapter we on,
So
Wayne?
today we are on Isaiah chapter 16.
Okay.
All right. And we're going to continue this prophecy to the nation of Moab. And if you remember on last week, we started that and we talked about how Moab was given a prophecy by the prophet Isaiah. And he was basically pointing out some of the destruction types that are going to happen to Moab. And that's just going to continue. And so, with that being said, we don't have to do another introduction to this. We kind of did that on last week. Let's go ahead and get the reading in, and then we'll go right into outlining each of these verses. So let's take a listen here. Isaiah chapter 16.
Chapter 16. Send ye the lamb to the ruler of the land from Selah to the wilderness, unto the mount of the daughter of Zion. For it shall be that, as a wandering bird cast out of the nest, so the daughters of Moab shall be at the fords of Arnon. Take counsel, execute judgment, make thy shadow as the night in the midst of the noonday. Hide the outcasts, bewray not him that wandereth. Let mine outcast dwell with thee, Moab. Be thou a covert to them from the face of the spoiler, for the extortioner is at an end, the spoiler ceaseth. The oppressors are consumed out of the land. And in mercy shall the throne be established, and he shall sit upon it in truth in the tabernacle of David, judging and seeking judgment, and hasting righteousness. We have heard of the pride of Moab. He is very proud, even of his haughtiness, and his pride and his wrath, but his lies shall not be so. Therefore shall Moab howl for Moab, every one shall howl. For the foundations of Kirhareseth shall ye mourn, surely they are stricken. For the fields of Heshbon languish, and the vine of Sibmah. The lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plants thereof. They are come even unto Jazer. They wandered through the wilderness. Her branches are stretched out, they are gone over the sea. Therefore I will bewail with the weeping of Jazer, the vine of Sibmah. I will water thee with my tears, O Heshbon and Ele'eli, for the shouting of thy summer fruits and for thy harvest is fallen. And gladness is taken away, and joy out of the plentiful field. And in the vineyards there shall be no singing, neither shall there be shouting. The treaders shall tread out no wine in their presses. I have made their vintage shouting to cease. Wherefore my bowels shall sound like an harp for Moab, and mine inwards parts for Kirharesh. And it shall come to pass, when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he shall come to his sanctuary to pray, but he shall not prevail. This is the word that the Lord hath spoken concerning Moab since that time. But now the Lord hath spoken, saying, Within 3 years, as the years of an hireling, and the glory of Moab shall be contemned, with all that great multitude, and the remnant shall be very small and feeble.
All right. So, once again, we see this prophecy, this outlining by the prophet Isaiah to the nation of Moab. And, when you go through this, you notice that there is a character personality type that we see that's consistently outlined here. And one of it is haughtiness and pride. When I was reading this and going through my study on this earlier, I kept thinking about America. How we look at ourselves as the so-called greatest nation in the world, the richest, most powerful. And you begin to think about some of the dialogue that we say even about ourselves. And as I was reading this, I was thinking, I said, man, we say some of these same things that are written in here. And are we a nation that is sitting in our haughtiness or our pride and not really recognizing and giving thanks and recognition to God? Most of the time, we don't think about it because a lot of our nation, especially our leaders and different ones, they don't consider God as a reality. They don't think about the fact that there is a spiritual aspect to our existence that needs to be recognized and paid attention to. And that's just not a regular all day, everyday thing that happens in our leadership in this country. It does happen in certain areas, and I think to a certain degree it has happened in our past, not perfectly, but it was acknowledged. Maybe that's why America has rose up and has done so well. But the one thing that you need to keep in mind is that you don't want to start proper and not finish. We want to be able to recognize God in our beginnings, and definitely as we begin to move towards our more present and latter years. So when I look at Moab here, and look at what the first verse says. It says, "Send ye a lamb to the ruler of the land of Selah, to the wilderness, unto the mount of the daughters of Zion." Now, this is a statement that's connected to what we've already talked about in the last chapter. Moab is recognizing that there is trouble coming. And this concept of send a lamb, that basically means, well, let's send an offering to God. Let's give God something. Let's give, and they recognize that we should do that by sending it to the people and what they call the daughters of Zion, which recognizes Israel. So send a lamb or an offering or some kind of peace recognition to the God of Israel by sending it to Israel. And you say, well, okay, well, why are they doing that? Because they recognize this is something that we should have been doing anyway, and we have ceased from doing it. Good evening, Beverly. We're on Isaiah chapter 16. And so what you see here, when they said, well, let's send a lamb, it's kind of like when you want to do something be careful with that knife after you've already cut yourself. You're sitting there, you're doing something, and you cut yourself, and then somebody says, you need to be careful with that knife. Well, you've already cut your finger. All right, so, and this is what Moab is trying to do. Well, let's send the lamb now, so that we can, make an appearance that we are trying to connect with this God, a God of Israel. Well, number one, it's not real. You're just doing it as an analyzing of what can we do to fix the problem, not a surrendering of the heart. And that's a lot of times a lot of our problems. We want to know, well, how can I fix the issue, when a lot of times the issue is a heart issue. Sometimes we can apologize when we do things wrong, or we can say, I'm sorry, and you say, okay, fine. But has the apology and has the statement of I'm sorry changed your action and your behavior for the next time? All right, go back to the analogy. All right, you done bandaged up the hand or got the stitches, and a couple months later you back in there with that knife again. Have you learned to be more careful? Or are you going to be the same way and you're going to cut another finger? And so the lack of respect about the things of God is what caused Moab to just feel, I don't need to pay God any attention. It's just like if you have the lack of respect with a very sharp knife, I can just move and cut with this knife any kind of way I want to. I can move away from my body. I can cut towards my body. You don't want to be cutting towards your body. But when you don't care, I can do it any way I want to do it, you lack respect as to what can happen because of that action. Now, to the analogy, if you cutting something towards your body, you make one wrong move, you're going to cut some fingers, or you're going to cut yourself. And it's the same thing with God. When you have lack of respect for God, you cut yourself off from the grace, the mercy, the goodness of God. But because God says, I will eventually give you what you want. You set the die, God's going to pour in the mold. I don't know if you guys ever done like metal shop or something like that, when they make different things, when they pour in this liquid metal, you have to make a cat. You have to make a mold, and sometimes you make it out of some forms of dirt and hardened clay. You can make it out of other things. Some people make it out of wood, but you got to shape it. But eventually, at some point, they're going to pour in the liquid metal, and that metal is going to take the shape of what you have molded. And that's just like what God is saying. God says, I will pour into you what you mold. And if you want God as your God, when God pours in his spirit, that's who you become. But when you say, I don't want God, when God pours in, you become alien to God. That's what happened to Pharaoh. And so this is now the scenario that's going on with Moab. And as we go through this chapter, and this is not the last chapter that we're going to see. And you say to yourself, well, why is Moab getting all of this attention? Remember, Moab is a distant cousin or relative of Israel. Abraham was the father of the Israelites, and when he left Haran to go sojourn as God told him to do, he took Lot with him. And Lot is the father of two nations, one Ammon and one Moab. And so there is some connection or kinship here. Look at verse 2. For it shall be, and this is the Isaiah speaking, and this is prophetic words. When you see these, it shall be. That means it's not there now, but it's coming. It's going to happen. And that's an important thing that we should keep in mind, that there's a lot of it shall be's that God has spoken about in our lives. Things that are going to happen that we got to recognize. And what we want is God's promises for good and for blessings and for a greater achievements and closer walk with God to be our it shall come to pass, or it shall be. With Moab, unfortunately, the it shall be is not a good thing. Look what it says. For it shall be that as a wandering bird cast out of the nest, so the daughters of Moab shall be at the fords of Arnon. That's that statement of the fords of Arnon speaks about the river that runs through that land. And so what it says here, it says, it shall be, in other words, it's going to happen, that as a wandering bird that has been cast out of the nest. Now, that's a bad thing when a bird has been cast out of the nest. And the reason why it's called wandering is because it's not ready to what? To fly. When a bird has been knocked out of the nest and it's not ready to fly, you've seen them from time to time. A bird is just kind of hopping around. It shouldn't have left the nest, but it's out. And it can't fly. It can't protect itself. It's not ready to do the things it was designed to do. This is what's going on with Moab. Moab is not doing what it was designed to do. And that's the thing we got to even watch out for ourselves. We are designed to be in the very presence of God, to worship God, to magnify his name, to be a friend of God. That's what God has designed us for. But when we decide not to do that, we then become like this wandering bird. We're in places where we should not be. We're not going to develop. When the mama and papa bird come, they're not going to be able to feed us. And when we're in places that we should not be, we can't get fed properly. And we need the word of God to be given to us. And so it says that this is how Moab is going to be. And look at verse 3. And then it says, take counsel. Now, what this means is you need to learn from this. This is a good thing. One of those things that gives you hope. When trouble comes in any kind of facet, but yet within the word of God, within this prophecy of Isaiah, there is this phrase here that says, take counsel. That means you can still learn. You can still, I don't really just went all out. I don't went crazy. I done all kinds of bad, all kinds of wrong. My fate is sealed. I'm out the nest. But yet, if God says take counsel, you can. That means even though you're out the nest, you still may be able to fly. Not like how you would have if you had stayed in the nest, but you still may be able to fly if you take counsel. And that's one of the things, that's the beautiful thing that we should keep in mind when it comes down to the miraculous things of God. Excuse me for 1 second. Let me just see who this is. All right. Hold on for 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. That was my mom. I had reached out to her because today's her birthday. She turned 81 today.
Okay.
So I told her, I said, I'll give her a call as soon as we are done with our study. But so you can see that the phrase "take counsel" is a good thing. It gives you a little hope. All right, but that doesn't mean that the woe or the pronouncement of all of the things of judgment that were going to happen are not going to happen. They're still going to happen. You're still going to go through this. You're still going to be out the nest. But take counsel. All right? Execute judgment. Make good decisions. Okay? Make thy shadow as the night in the midst of the noonday. Hide the cast out. Bewray not him that wandereth. All right? So what is this saying? It's saying, number one, we said take counsel. Execute judgment. That means what? Good decisions. Make thy shadow as the night in the midst of the noonday. Okay. So what you want is you want to have your shadow so that it is in a situation where it can't be seen. It can hide from some of the destruction. So maybe the destruction that is coming might not find you because you were able to hide your shadow. All right. So it says, make thy shadow as the night in the midst of the noonday. The noonday means it's like a whole lot of sun and you should be very visible. Your shadow should be easy to find. But if you can do that, then you make it like the noonday. Then the next part says, hide the outcast. So if you can do that, hopefully you'll be able to hide from some of the destruction that is coming your way. See, it's when the enemy comes, he's looking for that which is visible and that which is seen. And there are certain things that even when you have done wrong and have gone down the wrong road, but you start thinking about God, you start taking counsel, you start making better decisions, then some of that destruction that was already aimed at you may not be able to find you. And you may be able to escape some of it. Moab is not going to escape all of it. But there are some that will. And we'll see that at the end of this chapter. All right? And so, bewray not him that wandereth. In other words, it's saying that don't betray or don't give in, though you are wandering. Well, why are you wandering? Because you're out the nest and you're not prepared. You're in a place where pretty much anything that sees you can take action against you because you have no ability yet to fly, because you stepped into a place where you were not prepared. And so when you're walking in your own pride, you're in a place where you cannot do the things that you're supposed to do. When I don't need God, I don't need the things of God, I don't need to trust in God. Those are mindsets that people unfortunately can have, and God lets us know that He will allow it, but He will still send out the warnings, the attention grabbers. And if you don't do it, then the ultimate circumstance of being wandering in an area where you recognize you don't have the ability to protect or to do the things that you should be able to do. And it gives a description, as we had stated, as the bird being kicked out the nest. All right. Verse 4. Let thy outcast dwell with thee. All right. And so the outcast, once again, You're in a place where you shouldn't be. That's why you are outcast. Moab, be thou a convert to them from the face of the spoiler. In other words, there is a spoiler coming, and you want to be able to have somebody that can help turn and move or convert you into a different way of walking or way of thinking, right? And once again, this is what the power of God is attempting to work in us: a new way of thinking, a new way of acting, a new way of reacting. All right. It says, for the extortioner is at the end, and the spoiler ceases, and the oppressor are consumed out of the land. All right. So all of these things, extortioner, a spoiler, oppressor, all of these things are seeking that which is out of place. I'm not trusting God. I don't believe that I need God. I don't believe in anything. Well, you have got out of the nest, the protection. And so now, because you're out, everything that is seeing you is looking to grab you. All right. And so the spoiler and the oppressor will certainly come, because now you are visible. But then, like the verse prior said, we ask and hope that God can hide us when we should be very visible to the enemy. Right? And that's why the Bible tells us, don't give any space to the devil. Don't give the devil an opportunity. Right? Don't be in a place where he could easily grab and manipulate and use you. Verse 5. And in mercy shall the throne be established. Now, once again, we're looking at the fact that even though all of this trouble is coming on Moab, and we're going to see here in a minute, because of their pride, there is mercy. And it says, and in mercy shall the throne be established. In other words, regardless as to what's happening to you, Moab, that's not going to stop God's plan. Whether Moab gets themselves together or doesn't, it's not going to stop what God's going to do. God's going to establish a throne. And it says, and shall sit upon it in truth in the tabernacle of David. So Moab, you've been cast out. You have done what you wanted to do. But guess what's going to happen? You didn't stop what God's going to do. And that's one thing we should keep in mind even today. People can say what they want about what they think about God. I don't believe in God. I don't believe you can serve God like this, or I don't want to serve God, or I don't know, I'm not sure God exists, or I don't believe in the Bible. And that's fine. People can say what they want to say. And you can debate and discuss all day long with folks. But guess what? That's not going to stop God from being God. He's still going to do what he's going to do. And he's going to set up a throne. He's going to establish it. And the truth about it is that the descendant of David himself is going to sit on the throne. And even the resurrected David and even the Lord Jesus himself will rule in that day. All right. And so the tabernacle of David, judging and seeking judgment, and hasting righteousness. So righteousness is going to prevail, regardless as to what any other nation does. We're talking about this woe to Moab, but there's been hundreds, thousands of nations. Every nation is going to have to give account unto God. We just happen to have a written record about some of the nations that were during the time of Israel, when they were in their development, and in the time of Judah, and some of these other nations that were around. But the nations that are existing in our modern time, in the last 2,000 years or so, those nations will have to give an account as well. And so it's important for us to recognize that nobody escapes. Okay? So he says in verse 6, we have heard of the pride of Moab. He is very proud. And that's the problem. As we have been pointing it out that we were going to get to this, this is where Moab had the problem. Because Moab had pride in the sense that they just didn't believe that they needed God. They were trusting totally in their own strength and their own ability. It says we have heard of the pride of Moab. He is very proud. Even his haughtiness and his pride and his wrath. But he lies shall not be so. All right. So what do you see here? Look at this. In this one verse, we hear pride of Moab. He is very proud. Even his haughtiness and his pride again. And then it says, and his wrath, wrath. All right? And then it says, but his lies. So you see, you can put all this together. You see what kind of salad this is. This is a salad of a nation that just was all about themselves and was also corrupt. Right? They had wrath and they had lies. Verse 7. Therefore shall Moab howl. What does that mean? They're going to cry. They're going to weep. Moab shall therefore Moab howl for Moab. Every one shall howl. For the foundation of Kirahathstin, that's just one of the cities in Moab, shall they mourn. In other words, it's going to be a bad day. Surely they are stricken. Now look at this verse. Look what we see. We see howl mentioned twice. Then we see the foundations, the very structure, the things that you thought were never going to be able to be shaken, they're going to be shaken. For the foundations of Kirath shall ye mourn. You're going to mourn because the foundation is no longer able to sustain you. It's not going to be a steady or a safe foundation any longer. All right. Surely they are stricken. All right. So they're either moved or broken or destroyed. Verse 8. For the fields of Heshbon language. All right. So now it names another city, Leshbon. They're fields, and it's talking about how fertile they were. They had these great fields, but it said they're going to language. That means they're not going to be as fruitful as they were in the past. And the vine of Shemoth. All right, so the vine speaks about the grapes. Right, the fruit. It's not going to be what it says. The vines of Shemoth are going to also languish. The lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plant thereof. All right, and so the lords of the heathen. What does that mean? The enemy, which is described as the heathen, and the Lord meaning what? The leader or the captain or the king. And this speaks of how this is going to happen. How is the foundation going to be stricken? How is the fields going to languish? How is the vine going to be broken? Because these lords, these heathen lords or these heathen kings, in other words, an invading army is going to come in. And we know from history that more than likely that invading army was the Assyrian army that came in. Some commentators think that it might have been the Babylonians, but another nation came in and totally, basically wiped them out. And that's one thing that's just, you think about it. We don't hear about the nation Moab. When the last time you met a Moabite person? That nation doesn't. It's not a reality in our world today. All right. So they've been totally removed from our geography, but they're still here in history. All right. And so it goes on, and it says they are come even to Jazer. They wandered through. So they're still what? Wandering. Why? Because this other nation, the lords of this heathen nation has come in and has caused them to scatter. All right. They're wandering through the wilderness. Her branches are stretched out. They are going over the sea. And so what this is saying is that everything that they used to do, sending food and things from the vine and food from the fields from one land to the other, And now it's not the vine, the fruit of the vine, or the fruit of the field. It's you that's wandering and moving. You used to send your goods everywhere. Now you are running everywhere. Right? And so you're going to be going places that you didn't plan to go, didn't want to go, but you got to go because the invading armies are coming in. Verse 9, therefore I will bewail. In other words, that means cry. He said that in verse 5. He says, no, I'm sorry. No, this was the first. I'm mistaken. Not verse 5. Verse 9. Therefore I will bewail with the weeping of Jazer. In other words, Isaiah is saying, I'm going to cry for you. I feel bad. Sometimes there are people that are hard-headed, don't listen, don't pay attention to God. And when the bad thing comes, the person that was trying to tell them is not happy that the bad thing is coming. Your heart is broken. I'm sorry that you got to go through this in order to learn the lesson. And I think we've all have been there. I've been there myself. With you had to go through a lot of things because you were hard-headed. You didn't listen, and you're like, okay, Lord, I'm gonna listen. I don't want to have to endure or go through that again. I'm sure we all have done one or two things in our lives. We're like, okay, that was not the thing to do, and so I'm not going to do that because that was painful and it was not something that I ever want to experience again. It says, therefore I will bewail with the weeping of Jazer, the vine of Sidmah. I will water thee with my tears. I'm going to cry for you when I see how your vine is going to be destroyed. You used to be fruitful. You used to have all kinds of good things. And once again, when I'm reading about this, I was thinking about America. All the things that we have done here in America. I hope and pray that we don't get some kind of warning like this on us. Although you kind of wonder, well, why not? Because if we continue to turn our back on God, then that may be certainly the thing that may be on its way. But it's not something that nobody wants to see happen. You will be sad. It will be a reason to cry. All right, and it says, "O Heshbon and O Eleph, for the shouting from the summer fruits, and for thy harvest is fallen." Your summer fruits and your harvest is not happening because there's nobody there to pick it. It's rotten on the vine. Why? Because the invading armies have come. You don't have any infrastructure. You don't have any reapers to go do it. Everybody is running for their own lives. And so therefore, the whole commerce that you had set up is now broken down. Like it stated before, the foundation of how you built is no longer working. People are not showing up to work. People are not harvesting the good crops that are there. The good crops that are there are not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay there and they're going to rot. Or the invading armies may pluck them here and there. But it's not going to do what you were used to it doing. Your goods and all of your merchandise are not going to be able to be used as you had designed for them to be used. Verse 10. And gladness is taken away. Look at that. No, what are you glad for? Nothing. I have nothing to be glad for. Why? Because we are being overrun. Gladness is taken away. And joy out of the plentiful fields. The fields used to be plentiful and people were joyful because of all that they had. And that's gone. This is what happens when you have a nation that insists on living a prideful existence. I will not acknowledge God. All right? And so that's going to be gone. The gladness is gone. Joy is gone. Plentifulness is gone. And in the vineyard there shall be no singing. Gone. No singing. Neither shall there be shouting. And that shouting is, not like yelling, but shouting for, like when your best player shoots a shot or scores a touchdown, you're shouting for the accomplishment. There's no shouting for all of the accomplishments that have been done. The treader shall tread out no wine. So they're out there, their feet are stomping, their feet are going back and forth, up and down like you would do if you tread wine, but they're not going up and down in the wine treading, they're going up and down and running and trying to get away. So the treader is going up and down with his feet, but he's not producing any good wine. He's not producing in anything. All right, and it says, no wine in their presses. I have made their vintage shouting to cease. All of their bragging is over. They were bragging, yeah, we're the best, we're the biggest, we're the strongest, we're the richest. Over. It's no, you're not saying that no more. Right? And so not even from a standpoint of just a nation, even from a standpoint of just an individual or a family or a church, or a community, when you think, oh, we're all of this, we're all of that, it's over, it's gone. You were, but you didn't think or acknowledge God while you had it. And God's been calling and talking and touching and trying to get your attention, and you refuse, and you've formed a cast, and now a cast of I'm not going to ever trust God. And guess what? Now God is pouring into that cast, and it is coming out with a bad shape. Verse 11. Wherefore my bowels shall sound like an harp for Moab. In other words, once again, he was saying in verse 9, I bewail him. And now in verse 11, he said his inner bowels, his inner being, his heart is broken to see what's happening to Moab. Okay? In his inner parts. Verse 12. And it shall come to pass when it is seen that Moab is weary on high places. Now, what are high places? That's places that they would go to worship their false gods. And so Moab will run, and they're going to be weary and tired, calling on their gods in their high places, their false gods. And they're calling and calling, and they're tired because they've been calling and calling on these false gods, and there is no answer. How many times do we trust in things and there is no answer? I'm going to trust in my might. I'm going to trust in my wisdom. I'm going to trust in my finance. I'm going to trust in all of my strength. I'm going to trust in my buddy. America, we trust in our economy. We trust in our military. Right? What happens if this doesn't work? Right? And so, and individually, the things that we trust in, are they going to work when you need them to? So Moab is on their high place, but they're weary, they're tired because their gods, their false gods, are not answering because they can't. That he shall come to his sanctuary to pray, but he shall not prevail. He went to his own sanctuary, to his place, to his so-called holy place, his church, his gods, but they're not going to prevail. Verse 13. This is the word that the Lord hath spoken concerning Moab since that time. This is not a very enjoyable situation. And so what is Moab lacking? Why is this word coming to Moab? Well, kind of like what we're going to be celebrating on tomorrow. They have no thanksgiving to God. They have no ability to say, God, I'm thankful for you allowing my fields, allowing my wine presses, allowing all of the great things that you have blessed me to have, and be appreciative and thankful for. Some people can't be thankful because they don't have everything. So then they're not thankful for anything. And that's a sad thing to be. Because, well, I want everything. I want what this guy got. I want what this guy person has. But wait a minute. What do you have? Because there are somebody that would like to have what you got. And you got to be thankful for that. And so we got to make sure that we defy the enemy, because the devil wants us to, he gets in our ear as the adversary. You shouldn't be happy. You shouldn't be thankful. Look at how other people are doing and you ain't got. And he's always pointing out what the other person has. But what the devil never does is point out what a whole lot of other people don't have. And when you recognize that and when you see that and it gets into your spirit to recognize, Lord, I'm thankful for what you've given me. Like, nobody has it all. Nobody has everything. But what you need, though, is a relationship with God, because that's where true thankfulness will come from. All right? Verse 13. Let me read this one more time, and then we'll go right into 14, and then we'll finish up. For this is the word that the Lord has spoken concerning Moab since that time. Verse 14. But now the Lord has spoken, saying, within 3 years. Now, how long will it take for all this to happen? He's giving you a time, 3 years. Now, that's, to me, that is once again a glimmer of mercy. It's going to happen, but I'm going to give you a time frame so you know when it's going to happen. You got 3 years to make some adjustments. It ain't going to change. The invading army is still coming. But you got 3 years to do what you feel you need to do, to ask God to give you direction and purpose and meaning to be able to deal with what is coming. It's going to happen. So he said, within 3 years, as the year of a hireling, like when a person would sell themselves out as a servant back in the day, they would have a contract for 3 years. I will serve you and do whatever work you need me to do. The getting the water, the building, the blacksmith or whatever. You were indentured to that person, and it would be for 3 years. You would collect your wages, and then after that, you'd be free to go. But in 3 years, and it says, as the years of a hireling, and the glory of Moab shall be condemned. All right, it's going to be over. All right, it's a sad thing that it has to come to an end. With all that great multitude, and the remnant shall be very small and feeble. And what does that remnant mean? I mean, there will be some people that will not be destroyed. But the ones that won't be destroyed won't be able to amount to much. They won't have much strength or much ability. The remnant will be very small and very feeble, or small in number and very little power, very little authority. But there will be a remnant. All right? And that's something to keep in mind. A lot of times there's a lot of things where we can say, well, you know what? God has left me with this. It's not that big and it's not that strong, but I got this. I got a remnant of what I can do, what I can say, what I can think, right? What I can accomplish. And I'm going to use my very small and very feeble remnant to continue on in the name of God. All right? And so the warning has come, and then the understanding that you have been given a grace and a mercy by getting this ahead of time. That's just showing that God is saying, I'm going to come. Now, you think about this. This is what God has said to the whole world. I will come back. I am coming again. And my rewards are with me. Now, the thing about it is we hear the word reward. We think that's all good. No, some rewards are good. Some rewards are not. You're going to get, it's like the wages of sin. You think, okay, a wage is payment. That sounds like good. I'm going to get paid. Yeah, but the wages of sin, the Bible says, is death. All right? But the gift of God is eternal life. And so we see here that the prophet is letting Moab know, you have done wrong, and you've done wrong on purpose. You have totally ignored God, and you're going to have to deal with it. And this is what God has told me to tell you, Moab. And we're going to stop here because this is the end of the chapter. We're not done because we're going to hear some more stuff about Moab coming from the prophet Isaiah. All right, but with that being said, we're going to bring this particular portion to an end. Any comments or questions on what we talked about today?